أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المذمومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nisa, verse 81, put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient as the trustee of affairs. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most beneficent and the most merciful. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is known as Al-Wakil, the universal trustee. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been entrusted the affairs of the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken the responsibility of providing rizq, of providing sustenance, of providing blessings to each and every creation of His world, of the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our guardian. He protects us. He knows what we go through, and He provides rizq accordingly. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is known as Al-Wali, the friend or guardian. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us from calamities. Wali in Arabic has many different meanings, but the root word of wali is connected to nearness. So when we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wali, we mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is close to us. And when we obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we are an obedient servant to Him, that means that we are also close to Him. We are also a wali to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the last lecture that I discussed, I talked about the importance of seeking knowledge. And in that lecture, I mentioned that the Holy Prophet ﷺ made it one of the biggest goals of Islam to create opportunities for the new Muslims to gain knowledge. And the motive behind that goal was so that the new Muslims can have a firm foundation of their iman. They can strengthen their faith. Because if you learn more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you understand and you gain knowledge about the usul ad-din, you learn about the roots of religion, you understand the existence of Allah, you understand why Allah has no partner, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wahid and ahad, then your iman is strengthened. Your iman becomes firm. So the prophets created these opportunities for the Muslims in hopes and with the intention that they can strengthen their faith. Iman in general is composed of two elements. Number one is yaqeen. It is certainty in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second element it is composed of is tawakkul, putting your trust in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before we move on, I would like to briefly define yaqeen. Yaqeen in general means it is the absence of doubts. You do not question. You are 100% sure about the existence of something. You 100% believe that something exists in this world. But if we look at the definition of yaqeen, of certainty, from an Islamic perspective, from a fiqh perspective, in Islamic jurisprudence, yaqeen, certainty, is one of the highest levels of faith. In the Quran, there are 6 grades of faith. And when you have yaqeen, when you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, when you leave everything up to the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you surrender everything to the will of Allah, you have attained the highest level of yaqeen. You've attained the highest grade of faith. In the Quran, there are 3 levels of yaqeen that are mentioned. The most basic level of yaqeen is ilm al-yaqeen. It is the knowledge of certainty. In the Quran promotes for us to learn about Allah. The Quran promotes for us to learn the beliefs of Islam. This connects us back to my second lecture, where I said that you have to learn about Allah, understand about Allah in order to have yaqeen and belief in it. You cannot love something without knowing about that thing that you love. Yaqeen, ilm al-yaqeen, is knowing and understanding who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Nowadays, there are many doubts. We doubt everything. Every day we question, is this true? Is this false? And we research and we Google and we look for answers. Sometimes we doubt the existence of God. Sometimes we doubt the status of the messenger of God. We doubt the imamat of Imam Ali. We doubt if the holy book of Islam is truly the Quran. And doubts in Islam, they are not a negative thing. They become negative if we don't treat them the correct way. Whenever we have a doubt, whenever we have a question, the way to approach that is to ask someone. Look for a source of information, a reliable and authentic source that can help you clear that doubt, that can help you clear that confusion. If you leave that doubt be, you do not answer, you do not question the existence of God, you will not truly understand Tawheed. You will not truly understand why you pray Salah. You will not truly understand the message of Imam Hussein. In order to learn something, you need to ask questions. So ilm al-yaqeen tells us that ask questions. Ask about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and find information, gain knowledge through His attributes. The second stage, the second level of yaqeen is ayn al-yaqeen. It is the eyes of certainty. Ayn al-yaqeen in the Quran is when you physically see the existence of something. Now we know that we cannot see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so how does ayn al-yaqeen apply here? We can achieve ayn al-yaqeen when we look at the signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeatedly tells us that look at the ayat, look at the sun, look at the moon, look at the stars, look at the rotation of the earth, look at how perfect this whole universe has been created. Do you not think that there is a God behind this universe? Do you not think that there is something that exists behind this universe that has perfected it so much? So Ayn al-Yaqeen tells us to look for miracles, look for the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the last stage of yaqeen is haqq al-yaqeen. It is the absolute truth, absolute yaqeen. And this is a yaqeen that you cannot achieve with your eyes. It is not a yaqeen that you can achieve with books and knowledge. This is a yaqeen that requires us to look at our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It requires us to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It requires us to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who possess haqq al-yaqeen remember Allah when standing. They remember Allah when sitting. They remember Allah in their sleep. Every thought and action and word that they say all point towards the path of Allah. They all point towards what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Those who are possessing haqq al-yaqeen, they cannot commit a deed that goes against the pleasure of Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Anfal verse 2, He describes those who have haqq al-yaqeen. He says, those who at the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being recited, their hearts are awakened. Their hearts begin to palpitate. Their hearts recognize who their Khaliq is. They recognize that this is Allah that we are speaking about. It is not some ordinary existence. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues the ayah. He says that when the recitation of the ayat, the signs of the Quran, when they are being mentioned, we, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, strengthen their iman, strengthen their faith, and they begin to have tawakkul. Remember when I said that iman is considered of two parts, yaqeen and tawakkul. In order to have tawakkul, you must have yaqeen. When we begin to have certainty in faith, we strengthen our faith, we believe in Allah with all our hearts. The natural consequence as a result is tranquility. You begin to have peace. You rely and keep all of your affairs in the hands of Allah subhanahu. And you begin, as soon as you begin to have this tranquility, none of the problems in this world, none of the words of the people, nothing in this universe can move you. You have now established a place in your heart for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what we see in Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. We see that he achieved the highest level of yaqeen. In his last breaths, Imam Hussein alayhi salam still remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Fajr, if we look at verse number 27 and 28, some scholars, they say that Surah Al-Fajr has been dedicated for the sake of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And they say this because of the last four ayat of the Holy Quran, of the surah. What does Imam Hussein alayhi salam do in his last breath? When is he killed? he is killed in sajda. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say during the last moments of Imam Hussein alayhi salam? He says in Surah Al-Fajr, verse 27 and 28, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya ayyataha nafsul mutma'inna, O soul at peace. This is referring to Imam Hussein, that O soul that is at peace, come to your Lord. Come to your Lord. إِلَىٰ رَبِّكِ رَاضِيَةً مَرْضِيَّةً. Come to your Lord well pleased with him, and your Lord is well pleased with you. When you have haqq al-yaqeen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with you and you are pleased with Allah. Because you begin to have tawakkul. You leave everything in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In our daily lives, we have anxiety every day. There is some sort of matter, some issue that we fear, we become depressed about, we are anxious about. Everyone has it. Just like the way that we have a physical illness, the same way we have spiritual and emotional illness. And whenever we have this fear, we have this anxiety, we tend to have a habit of going to other people. We trust our family. We trust our money. We trust our hard work. We trust our school, our doctor, our health. But our final trust should be on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we begin to trust other things, we do not trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves us alone. He leaves us alone. He lets us rely on other people. And then when we have our du'as unaccepted, we go to Allah, Ya Allah, why didn't you accept my du'a? Ya Allah, I was praying for so long. I had tawakkul in you. What tawakkul ala Allah? I said that I had trust in you. Why didn't you accept my du'a? What was lacking in my tawakkul? What was lacking in my tawakkul? The thing that is lacking in our tawakkul is that we rely on other people. We do not have our complete trust in Allah. Now, when we completely trust Allah, that doesn't mean we stop working. We say, Ya Allah, you are the owner of rizq. I trust you to give me rizq. Ya Allah, I have a final exam tomorrow. I want an A+ without studying. Ya Allah, I am sick. I will not go to the doctor because I trust you. Tawakkul is in two parts. The first part of tawakkul is human intervention. If we have a dua that, Ya Allah, I have an exam tomorrow. I have studied, Ya Allah. I revised the material. I asked my teacher questions. Now everything is up to you, Ya Allah. That is how tawakkul should be done. If we have problems with our rizq, we say to Allah, Ya Allah, I have applied for interviews. I have asked people for recommendations. I've treated my co-workers nicely. I have done whatever I can in my ability. Now I keep my tawakkul in you. Everything is now reliant on you. The first part is human intervention. And then the second part is doing dua, is leaving everything up to the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was once a man who was walking past a farmland. And this man, he saw a farmer, he was sweating profusely. and he was working very, very hard in the field. So this man stops and he approaches the farmer, and he realizes that the farmer is our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And he asks the Imam that, "Oh Imam, why are you working so hard for these worldly affairs? Why are you working so hard when our true destination is the Akhirah? What will you say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you're running after this world?" The Imam alayhi salam stops his work and he says to the man that what I am doing right now is ibadah. It is worship and obedience in the eyes of Allah. And he is very confused. The man shocked that he is running after this dunya, he's working, and you're considering that ibadah. So the Imam continues and explains. He says, "Do you think that ibadah is only limited to salah and so? You think it is only limited to prayer and fasting and all the other wajibat? Of course not. I have a house, I have a family to take care of. So I must work hard and earn an halal income for those people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like those who trouble others, who rely on other people, but they do not work for themselves. They do not earn a livelihood for themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes those individuals." And the man was shocked. We have this constant habit and tendency, this misconception that everything is just salah, saum, hajj, zakat. But even going to school, earning money for your family, being a breadwinner, that is also considered ibadah in the eyes of Allah. That is also considered having tawakkul in Allah. That is the importance of tawakkul. The reason that our Prophet ﷺ was silent and he was able to preach Islam for 23 years was because he had tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet, whenever he would walk home after a sermon, or he would walk home from the mosque, the people of the Quraysh, the unbelievers, they would bribe, they would show and give some incentives to the suhafa, the sufaha, the foolish people. They would bribe them, they would bribe the children of the Quraysh and say, "Go run after the Prophet. Stone him, throw sticks at him, tease him." The Prophet would feel anxious. He would have tightness in his chest. This is mentioned in the Quran. Imam Ali alayhi salam also felt lonely. For 25 years, he was not the Imam. The people did not recognize him for 25 years. But the reason that the Prophets and the A'immah succeeded was because they had tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the same applies to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. When he was in Karbala, on the day of Ashura, what does he say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says, "Allahumma anta fiqati fi kulli karb." That, "Oh Allah, I beseech you, I put my trust in you in every affliction." And then he says, "Wa anta rajai fi kulli shiddah." That, "Oh Allah, you are my only hope. So I beseech you, I ask only you, no one else. Everyone here has passed away. I've carried bodies to the tents. I have done everything you have asked me. So Ya Allah, I ask you, I put my tawakkul in you for what comes after." Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he does not regret anything. He does not go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he has filled that gap in his heart, that anxiety with the presence of Allah. The same way, we should also fill this gap in our heart, this void, this emptiness with the presence of God. Inshallah, in our upcoming lecture, we will be talking about sabr and how patience can help us overcome difficulties, like how Aba Abdullah al-Hussein showed patience during his moments, his difficult moments in Karbala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to have strong yaqeen and tawakkul in him, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us and reward us for the dhikr and the remembrance of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clear all our doubts and misconceptions about our beliefs, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us and strengthen our beliefs on this path of Sirat al-Mustaqim, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept those du'as who ask to visit the 14 shrines of the Ma'sumin, inshallah, who ask to visit Umrah or Hajj, or even the other shrines that are in Syria and other places, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst the Ansar, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen the army of Imam Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala faraj al-sharif, ensure his safety as well as hasten his reappearance. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
शाह सवारे करबला की शाह सवारी को सलाम, नेज़े पे कुरान पढ़ने वाले कारी को सलाम।